Hey guys, so we're in the LJ right now. We have not started tearing anything apart. We're ready to start doing our long arm install. We've got our JK axles prepped, painted. They're ready to get under this thing. But first, we got to see what we can do on the RTI ramp before the long arm kit. A little better than I thought she'd do. 60, not too shabby. It's a good start. It did all right, but let's go rip this thing apart. Hey guys, welcome back. If you've been following along for the LJ build series, you can see in front of us we got our JK axles cleaned up and trussed. You may have seen the previous video. If not, check it out. But this front axle was pretty rough. Had to bend it back, get it all trussed. It's ready to go. I ran out of some black paint for this one, so we'll try and get that finished up tomorrow before we're ready to bolt it in. But this thing is ready to go under the knife. We're gutting axles, steering. We're going to get the scoop shovel out from under and go flat belly. If you don't know what that is, that's going to be our TK skid. So it's going to be completely stuffed up there. So stay tuned. We're going to start tearing this thing apart. We're just about ready to drop the rear axle out. The only thing holding them now is our actual shocks. As you can see, it's pretty loose. Pretty straightforward. We cut off our brake lines and cap that off so we can tap into it for the new axle. I've cut off the e-brake cables. I'm not going to be running one, so we can get those out of the way. Pretty straightforward. Be safe. We're going to put a stand under this, lower it down, unbolt our shocks, and then lift the vehicle off. And then we're going to jump to the front real quick. So onto the front axle. We need to get this out of here as well. We got two uppers, two lowers, so we got to get those out of the way. Get our springs out, get our shocks out, and then we're going to get rid of this this fabulous steering kit with all that flex in it, and we're gonna do a beefy 1-ton upgrade in it while we're at it. So in the intro, you guys probably heard me talk about the long arm flat belly skid. So when I go wheeling in the Wranglers, my biggest issue I always have right here, big old scoop shovel hangs on every rock, every log. It's the worst part of the midsection. So with our long arm kit, we're gonna stuff the transfer case flush with the bottom of our frame rail. So we're actually going to gain, it's about 4 inches of belly height on top of our roughly 2.5 inch suspension lift. So that's going to be a huge upgrade. I'm super excited about it because I'm sick and tired of getting high-sided on everything. So we got the other side upper bar pins to come out. These ones are just fighting me, so I'm just going to cut the bar pins here and here, get them out of my way, and then we're going to put bar pin eliminators in. So you take the shock out. So we're about to start cutting off all of our upper control arm mounts, our lower control arm mounts, all on the frame. You have to cut all of them off except for the passenger side front upper. Technically, you can leave that one stay. If you've only got a grinder and a cut-off disc and flapper pads to grind it down, that'll work just fine. It'll be more time consuming. If you opt for the acetylene torch to cut everything out, do it in pieces. Don't put a bunch of flames and heat going up or into the frame. We're going to opt out the plasma as much as we possibly can out of the big chunks. And then we're going to rely on our grinding disc to get it cleaned up real nice, get it ready for paint, get it ready for new brackets. So we got all of our control arm brackets are now cut off. All the welds are grounded down. We primed and painted it. So now most of the dirty stuff is done. We can finally get to the fun new part stuff. But first, we got to get this scoop shovel out of here so that we can come over here and get all of our new brackets on and get our new complete flat belly skid installed and gain all of that ground clearance. Oh, that one's gone forever. If all of these come out for you, it's a good day. Ooh-wee, it's actually not in too bad a shape. I guess we're not quite done with all the dirty cleaning stuff, so we'll hit this with a wire wheel. Make sure it's solid, and then we'll get it primed and painted up. So we popped all of our plastic clamps holding our fuel line, our wiring harness, and our brake line off the frame rail. We cleaned it up, painted it, and now we're going to install our clamps. You want to bolt them up as high as you can with our self-tappers. If you want to test fit the bracket to make sure you have room, be a good idea, but you want them tucked up as high as you can and out of the way. So we're going to start working on our new T-case linkage brackets. We got to get our old ones out of here. We got to peel the carpet back, get this bracket unbolted from the interior side, and then get this wishbone bracket off of here. And then our new brackets will all be drivetrain mounted. So the only thing attached to the body is going to be the actual shifter and one linkage cable. So it'll help with being able to shift when you're off camber, tweaked, or whatever. It's going to work a lot better. So let's get that off of there. So we've got our transfer case relocation bracket installed. Took a little bit of time. We had to cut off our body mount side bracket. So that's no more. So we're not relying on that for anything. Our two-part bracket here does have two adjustments. So as you can see, we did install the first one down low. That caused an issue with our transmission. So we did have to press those out and bump them up. And we got a new sleeve here, and you'll reuse your flat plate with some self-tapping bolts, but we're good to go on our T-case side, so let's move on. All right, so now we have got our actual frame brackets all together. Each side is two pieces, so they are, you gotta pay attention which side goes with which. You flip your bracket over and your lower C-gusset will slot over your main bracket. You may have to bend these out just a hair or tap it on. We had to tap them on. And then each side will get 4 countersunk bolts with serrated nuts on the back. So you can tighten all that up on the bench, and then we can get these installed on the vehicle and show you what that looks like. All right, so we're gonna use a jack stand. We got them somewhat lined up. We're gonna hit it with some blue Loctite, get all 3 started, and then we'll snug them up. That was a lot. More the better, right?
Some's good, more is better. Too much is just right.
Should have invested in more Loctite. So we finally have the drivetrain under its own weight with our new brackets in. As you can see, we've got these plates in here. That's a 1-inch drop to make sure we had clearance all the way around. And then our flat belly, when that's going to get bolted on later after we get all our control arms in, it'll be pretty dang flush from almost rail to rail here. There is a 2-inch drop if you didn't want to try and stuff it as high as we are. There's plenty of adjustability. You can pull plates out, go up a little higher. Otherwise, you can bolt this in, which would take place of these sandwich plates, and then you can use the sandwich plates as well with this to get to that 3-inch total drop. So a lot of adjustability, super handy. We tried to massage and get this up as high as we could. I like where it's at right now, so we're going to keep moving forward. So we're going to put our upper control arm in first. That bracket does have an angle to it. This male end is straight. So, and then just pay attention to the orientation of your grease zerk. And there's no washer on this one, and that's for clearance. So we're going to put our LCAs in. You'll know they're the right way because the bend will go towards the outside and your clamping hardware will be on the bottom. These have a 5-degree bend to them, so just a very slight bend, and you want that kind of oriented towards the middle. And when you get it into the pocket and attached to the axle, if this housing is hugging really tight to one side, most likely you have this out 180 degrees. So just pay attention to that. And since we don't have an axle, we need to just kind of hold these up. All right, So we got our front 3-link in there. No track bar just yet, but we can finally move on to the rear. Get this rear axle we've been working on for weeks finally in the Jeep. All right, so we're going to put our passenger lower in first. It does have a ground clearance bend. You want the short bend and the rubber bushing going to the axle. And again, we've got grease zerk in there. We'll have to orient that once we get it in there. All right, now we got to take our lower control arm out because we weren't paying attention and we should have done our uppers first.
Are you so excited to get it done?
A little bit. A little nerve-wracking because my shakedown is going to be next month, and find any issues then. Woo. By the way, if those flex joints are installed correctly, you should not be able to move them by hand, which is why I'm using a bar. I'm gonna have to drop this because I'm a little excited to get the axle in. I've been building forever. So we gotta pop this out. So we're ready to install our rear shock so that we can finally suspend our rear axle. We had issues with our upper bar pins being all rusty, wallowed out. So we're installing our bar pin eliminators. So we got a flag nut on the top of our frame rail, our bar pin eliminator brackets getting sandwiched between the frame, and then we're just going to have one single bolt to deal with instead of the 2 little bar pin bolts and nuts. So got those installed. We're ready to hang our rear shocks and get this axle suspended. This side up, pointing up, bar pin eliminator, fancy like, boom. So we got our upper control arms in. This is kind of where you got to start doing some adjusting since it's a dual triangulated 4-link. We don't have a track bar. So you got to make sure your spring pads, you know, are where you want them. If you're stretching it back, this is the time to do that. So when you get your upper arms in, you want to bolt them in, check what you got for your pinion angle, kind of set your axle. We got it sitting on a stand right now, so we can set it at roughly our ride height so that I could adjust the pinion angle. So we would just take the top arms off. You want to loosen them because you're extending that arm out, and in turn that's pointing your pinion angle up. So but we got our pinion angle set where we want it. Now we got to go through and make sure we tighten all of our bolts, get our clamping bolts for our control arms in and torque those down, and then we can finally be done and start getting our springs in. I need to swap out our pinion yoke so I can get some drive shafts ordered. Kind of running out of time with this build because we got an event coming up that I want to bring this to, so let's keep going. So we're tightening our clamping hardware. These ones call for 140 inch-pounds, and what you want to do is you want to walk back and forth. You don't want to crank one down and then crank the other one down because then you'll have a tighter grip on one side. You want as much even clamping force on both bolts as you can. So we're just going to rock back and forth a little bit till we get click and click. So just make sure you're rocking back and forth. Don't crank one down, and use an inch-pound torque wrench, 140 inch-pounds. So now we're going to put our springs in, but first we had to take bump stop cup out. So threaded bolt going up. If you have to spray it, torch it, whatever. Ours came out. I couldn't believe it. So we'll count that as a win today. So once you get the cup dropped, you're going to take your bump stop in your kit, and then your cup bolted through that threaded nut up there, and then put your John's Bounce bump stop back in, and then we'll get our new spring up here, and we're roughly at full droop straight down right now. So you want to orient the spring so that it doesn't catch that cup when it's coming down. This should straighten out as you come up. And then we've got our retainer. And when you're putting these in, you want to make sure none of these tabs are going to catch any of the springs as it compresses. So you can rotate that, and then you also want to make sure your spring is centered, you know, left and right before you crank that down. And the nut goes underneath. These will bend just slightly. You don't need to crank it down to where it's flat, but you want to make sure that the nut gets all the way through the bolt. And you want to see a little bit of deflection in these tabbed ends, and then you know you got good connection. So on to our front coil springs. Similar coil retainers that we're using in the rear. Front ones are going to use the spacers. We're going to put tight side going up. Spacers will sit right inside there. Take our plate, drop it in. And on our other side, we had to tighten it to get those to bend a little bit, loosen it up, and then rotate it so that we could make sure it was going to clear as that coil spring compresses. So you may have to tighten it down, loosen it up, readjust it. So with the RockLink Pro Kit, we get sway bar disconnects. So they use these handy dandy little bullet pins. So we're going to put our bullet pin in the bottom, and then when you tighten these down, you want to leave these kind of accessible for your quick disconnect pins are easy to get to. Big moment of truth here. We're finally putting our flat belly skid in. We've torqued everything. We've tightened all of our grease zerks so that they're accessible. You want to use the same amount of plates here as you did for your drop. So we got 4 here for 1 inch. We got 4 here for 1 inch. As you can see, we are dang near completely flush, with our frame rail side. So check out the comparison on it and see, regardless of what we did for the lift, just what we gained in belly height. I'm probably going to nip these studs here so that the bolt will be flush, and then we'll be ready to start bashing this thing into some rocks and hanging it up. We got the LJ finally on the ground. We got a borrowed set of 37s right now because that's what I'm shooting to get. I'm hoping I can buy them off of whoever these are right now. We still need to do our exhaust install, and we also need to do our steering kit for it. We have a couple other little things we got to button up, brake lines, got to get my drive shafts ordered, finish up the gearing on it, but it's getting close. So stay tuned to the next episode, see what else we're going to stick in this thing, and then hopefully here soon we can get a wheeling video on it.